How to rank in AI search is one of the hottest topics on the internet right now. If you're a business owner and you can figure out how to get ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude to recommend you first, that is an absolute game changer. And for this reason, I brought in an expert guest speaker, Kyle Huggins, to tell us exactly how to do it. So in today's video, I'm gonna give you a sneak peek into a presentation that Kyle gave in my group, Meta Ads Mastery. He not only covers why we should be trying to optimize for AI search recommendations, but exactly how to do it. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, you guys, let's jump into it. So super grateful and excited to have Kyle Huggins here today. He is an agency owner based out of Washington, D.C. He owns Viking Ship Media, and he focuses on SEO, but he's here to talk to us today about GEO, or how to rank at the top of AI search. As you know, this is like breaking. This is like brand new stuff. So very excited to have Kyle here to tell us the absolute latest. He's going to share some strategies. So have your notes ready, and yeah, we'll pass it over to Kyle.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Michael. Looking forward to chatting with you guys about this. I've got a presentation that I got queued up. I'll walk you through everything. Happy to share it with you guys afterwards. I know there's going to be a recording afterwards, so don't feel like you have to write everything down. And then also, I'd like this to be get participation from you guys, because otherwise it's just going to be me monologuing for like 30 minutes and then get all your questions at the end. So as we're going through, like before we proceed, just feel free to, chime in. Michael, I don't know what the best way to do that is. If they want to like drop something in the chat, or if they just want to speak up, I'm cool with whatever. I don't know how you normally do it.
Yeah, so we typically will just drop a 1 in the chat, guys. So if you have a thought or a question and you want to just chime in, just drop a 1, and then Kyle, you could just monitor is that difficult for you to monitor the chat?
I got a second screen here. I should be able to do that. Let me just pull up the chat now.
Cool. Just drop a 1 in the chat, guys, and we'll help you out, Kyle, as we go along.
Can you guys see my message? I said hi.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's it. All right, I'm in the right spot. Awesome, guys. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will do this thing. Okay, can you guys see this okay? All right, awesome. So let's get into it. So thanks, guys, for being here. Just a little bit about me, just so you know who I am. I know I've been on a handful of these calls, but a lot of times I have client calls during this time, so I haven't made it. So I run Viking Ship Media. It's a digital agency doing marketing. I do some ads, which is why I'm part of this group. But my bread and butter historically has been ranking local businesses on Google Maps. So if you think of what's being recommended with your Google business profile, that's really where I have shown in the past year or two. But I do everything. I work with CRMs, I work with ads, I help with websites, all of that. But if I could do one thing, it would be Google Maps. And then in my background, I was working at Deloitte Consulting for about a decade. I don't know. Some people know what Deloitte is. Other people have been like, I've never heard of it. I hadn't heard of it until they reached out to hire me. But they're, a global company. I think they've got like over 200,000 employees, and they're very involved in business strategy for like big companies and government agencies. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth and really worked on business strategy, data analytics, and software development was like my core offering when I was there. So that lent itself very nicely to doing this type of work. Why I got into GEO is because I actually just stumbled into it. I was doing Google Maps optimization for my clients, and then they started texting me and saying, hey, I just got a lead because ChatGPT or Gemini referred me. And they're like, was that you? And I was like, I guess. I wasn't trying to get you ranked on ChatGPT. Like, this is so brand new. Yeah, of course. I was like, absolutely. But it turns out that there's a lot of overlap between the things that you do for Google Maps optimization and also GEO. And then there are obviously like a couple of things, like extra things you can sprinkle on top for GEO specific. So I've been diving more and more into that and just trying to understand what that lay of the land is, and also making that part of like, my marketing and my portfolio. So that's my background. Happy to dive into it unless anyone has any questions about me, but just happy to keep proceeding. See if I can see any chats. Big Four boys. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we are the Big Four. Kind of questions? Yeah. Yes, we're a consultant. Cool. Awesome, guys. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So what are the fundamentals of generative engine optimization? That's what GEO stands for. So thinking like Gemini, ChatGPT, all that. So really what it comes down to are ranking for these two values, which is relevance and trust. And the reason why I like to bring this up before we even get into any of the technical stuff is like, think about just for you, like if you had to make a recommendation to someone, or if you were looking for a recommendation, outside of the digital world, what would you use to determine whether you trust that recommendation or not? And it really comes down to these two items. And so, the example scenario I give is like, let's say, I'm a big fan of sushi. Let's say you're looking for a good sushi spot for the weekend. If it's relevant, but you don't trust it, might be a friend who suggested a nearby sushi spot, but they don't like sushi and have never been to the place. So you're like, yeah, it's relevant to the topic, but I don't really trust this person. The second one would be, you trust the person, but their recommendation isn't relevant, right? So it might be a sushi lover friend, but you're like, hey, where should I go get sushi? And they're like, oh, let me tell you about this coffee spot. And you're like, bro, that's not even what we're talking about, right? So obviously you're not going to take that recommendation. But if you had like that New York City food critic with 10 years of experience, they tried the restaurant, right? You got that trust factor and that relevance factor. And so when it comes down to, this is also for as just regular SEO, but for GEO in particular, what they're looking for are signals for relevance and trust. And so everything that we're going to be doing is going to be oriented around those two factors. So again, it's not like these algorithms are just magic, right? They actually are trying to base it off of human psychology and what you would actually do in the real world. So how do we do that with AI? Well, the main things is that for relevance, they're looking for content on your website, and they're looking for both content that is written for humans. So like if you're on your phone or on a website, like this is what you see and rendered. But then there's also a lot of back-end code that is used just by the algorithms and that you would never see unless you right-clicked and hit inspect. So if any of you guys have been in that world, you understand what that is. If not, that's totally fine. But these are going to be schemas. We're going to go over that in a bit. And then also for relevance, it's looking for other websites that aren't your own that are speaking to the fact that your business is relevant to whatever the user is looking for, right? So really we want content on your website that's for humans and for the algorithms, and then also content on other websites. For the trust, this really comes down to mostly others, right? Because someone says, hey, you should totally trust me. You'd say like, I don't know. But when third parties come in and say, hey, you should trust this person, then obviously that's going to have a lot more weight. And so what the algorithm is looking for is, are you mentioned consistently across the internet? And are you mentioned like in a consistent way? So we'll talk about that. Reviews matter a lot. Reviews actually don't matter a ton for regular SEO and even Google Maps SEO, but it does matter a lot for AI. It actually reads the content of the reviews itself, and I'll talk a little bit about the strategy there. And then other sites, other entities, are they recommending you, like Google, right? Google rankings do come into play, right? The AI tends to look at a Google search and see who's being ranked, and it factors that in as well. So honestly, that's also why regular SEO and Google Maps SEO helps, is because you're getting some of that bang for your buck because AI is trusting Google's recommendation as well. All right, I'll pause there before I move on. I'm looking at some questions here. What's the best schema code? How to? Yep. So I've got a whole slide on that. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, FAQs.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
So AI written content, does it value human written content more than AI written content, you think? Yep. Or, I mean, that would be kind of ironic, right? Like,
yeah. So spoiler alert, I write most of my content for my clients using custom GPTs that I've made. And it works, right? So what it really comes down to is the content helpful? Right? If you're looking for something and it gives you the answer, who cares if a human wrote it or if a AI or ChatGPT wrote it? The question is like, did you get the answer you were looking for, the help you were looking for? The problem is that most people, if they create written content with AI, they just open up a ChatGPT window or a Claude window. They type in a sentence or two and say, write me a 500 word article, go. And we all know that it sounds like AI, it looks like AI, and it's not helpful, right? So the key is teaching AI how to write in a helpful way, whether it's like a human or not. So I've actually invested a lot of time and energy into creating my own custom GPTs that walks through a process, it checks itself, all of that. And I'm always clear with my clients that, hey, I write my content with AI, but I also test it to make sure it's like, can even be detected as AI, which really, again, isn't the issue, but also is it helpful? And I always have humans review my content. So yeah, I use AI and I think people should. And as it gets better, who's going to care, right? As long as it's helpful.
That's exactly what I do with my copywriting. I mainly use Claude though. I'm surprised you use ChatGPT. Have you tried using Claude?
I use Claude for my for all of my content writing.
Oh, okay.
I use ChatGPT for my research.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Yep.
Amazing.
Good question. So yeah, we'll get to the FAQs, how to schema, and all of that. Dr. Hugh and a few when we get to that slide. Any other questions on this before we move on? Righty.
You guys can just jump off mute, when Kyle asks.
All right. So I just gave you a lot of, theory, right? Because again, I want us to anchor into what we're actually trying to do. But you're probably saying, yeah, cool, Kyle, but like, how do we actually do this? Like tactically, what steps do I take? And so this table outlines everything that we're going to go through. And for each line on here, like there's going to be a slide or two of, exactly what to do for these items. And so I like to categorize it by on-site and by off-site. So on-site is on your website, on like your actual website that you have, and then off-site is anything else that is not your website. So we're going through the written content and making sure that it's structured in a way that the algorithm can consume well. FAQs are huge. Schemas, that's where we'll get to your question about the types of schemas. And then also NAP, which is name, address, and phone number. If you've done any SEO before, you'll know what that is. And then offsite, I like to focus on the Google Business Profile. That's a huge one. Your citations, which ties back into NAP, and then any mentions you get. And I'll cover mentions more in detail, but in traditional SEO, you would focus on backlinks, right? I mean, that was the backbone of the original algorithm. Was the trust signal is how many hyperlinks were there between your website and other trusted websites. Backlinks have like little to zero impact on the AI algorithm because it's so sophisticated at reading content that it doesn't need the proxy of a hyperlink. It can just actually read the content and make its own judgment. And so really what you're looking for is that your business is mentioned on other sites. And I'll talk to you about some of the easier and harder ways that you can get that done, whether it's paid or not. So again, each one of these we'll walk through in detail, what I do and what I recommend and things I'm experimenting with, and you guys can ask your questions for each. So I'll pause there. Let's look here. We got Claude. We have access to this file. Yep, I'll share this file at the end. Michael, maybe you can distribute. I'm happy to share this with you guys. Oh yeah, you said that already. Cool. All right, any other questions, guys? All right, let's dive into the specifics. Feel free to take notes, but again, you'll get these slides, so all good. So let's start with on-site tactics. So for the first one, let's talk about structure and hierarchy. What I like to do is show an image like this, right? You got to imagine that these algorithms, whether it's the Google SEO algorithm or if it's any of these AI models, it's crawling your website, and the way that it indexes it is based on the linking structure between your pages, right? So if you got on your home page and you've got an about link and then it ports you over to your about page, that is a line on this graph, right? And so in the past, you used to declare like, hey, here's my hierarchy for my site. You don't even need to do that anymore because it just does it organically based on your internal linking structure. Well, if you decide to link every page on your website to every other page, the structure is going to look like this left-hand side. And so that just means that everything is related to everything in the eyes of the algorithm. So when it's trying to make sense of your content, it's just got a giant bucket of everything, right? So it's kind of hard for it to parse information. And so what I recommend and what works is a siloed structure where you create very specific topics or categories that you are trying to get the AI algorithms to recommend you for. And then you structure your site accordingly. And then any supporting content that you have is nested under that. But the key is you don't want that to be cross-linked across a silo. So this is structurally what it might look like to an algorithm. What does it look like when we do it ourselves? Well, this is a typical website structure that I would make for a client, whether I'm starting new or whether I'm inheriting a website and trying to make it work for them. And so typically I would start with the homepage, and then I would identify the number, top topics that I care about for my business. Maybe these are my most profitable items or the top things that I'm trying to rank for. And then all of these subtopics are there to support that main topic, right? And so if you think about it, the algorithm is going to go to your homepage. It's going to go to this first topic. It's going to consume that content. And then it's going to see this internal link, and it's going to go here and consume it. But because of this silo link structure, it's going to say, all of this content is relevant to this topic, but I don't know if it's relevant to this or not. Now it'll make its own judgments, but again, because of this structure, you've made it very clear to the algorithm what pertains to what. And again, you're giving a lot of positive value to your homepage and to your primary topics. So this is, structurally, hierarchically, how you would set up a website to create that siloed structure for an algorithm. What you choose to put in these is totally up to you. And again, when I work with my clients, I have a very specific way that I do it with my local clients. If it's non-local, then I say, what are the main things that you want to sell? What are the main things that you want to focus on? What are your main lead magnets? And those are the items that I would make my primary topics. So I'll pause there, but does this make sense as an exercise? Any questions about this piece?
Yeah, one question about like Shopify. If we use like a third party like page builder like Pagefly versus natively building our pages inside our theme, does that affect the calls between the app and that, does that affect it?
Yeah, so I've worked with one Shopify client, so I'm familiar with the themes and the liquid and all that. So I don't believe it would, right? Because again, what matters is that whether it's traditional Google or AI algorithm, it is going to query your URL and pull the page as is, right? And then it's going to consume the content based on that HTTP request and whatever HTML was rendered, right? So everything that you're describing is like the kind of like in the back end of the kitchen before the server comes out and dishes the plate to you at the table, right? So sure, there's a lot of connections in the back end of the kitchen, but like you as the consumer or the algorithm as the consumer is only seeing the final product that is put in place to you, which is the rendered HTML file. So I doubt that would have any impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then like from where the main issue I'm finding is page speed.
Yep.
How much does page speed impact on ChatGPT?
Yeah, that's still being debated, but the general consensus is not a lot. It was really big. I wouldn't even say it's really big for Google, right? Google also cares about relevance and trust the most. Obviously, page speed has a lot to do with user experience. They don't want bounce rates because it's taking forever, but like it's not like the coefficient value in front of all these variables is the same, right? So I would say even for Google, like page speed is probably like less than 10% of a factor, where like relevance and trust, your backlinks are going to matter more. So same thing. And I think AI is even less than it is a factor for Google. So in both cases, I would say that's the last thing I would worry about. It's kind of like, let's put the icing on the cake. We got to bake the cake first.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So Tim asked, can we do this for landing pages or do they have to be blogs?
Yep. So let me do the blog piece first. So a lot of people think of SEO and AI as blogs, right? Like, because that's historically has been one of the ways to do it. And what we're finding is that one of the reasons why blogs work so well is they created a siloed structure like this, right? You had the blog and then everything was pertinent to it. So I don't typically use blogs because I just do it straight on the website, right? I just do it based on the pages and that is sufficient. I feel like blogs are something that are kind of on the wayside, like they're fine, but you don't need them. Where in the past, I feel like they were really strong. For landing pages, I recommend using subdomains or distinct domains for landing pages. That's how I do it with my clients. So what you're seeing here for this structure is like your main domain. So like mine's vikingshipmedia.com. If I wanted to create, say, a funnel for a digital product and run that on Meta, I would not use vikingshipmedia.com and then a slug for my page. I would probably create like offers, or whatever. I would create a subdomain. And in this world, subdomains are separate for the algorithms. So that's another thing is a lot of people sometimes they'll put subdomains for each of these topics and they're hamstringing themselves. So this structure is for your primary website, which usually is your root domain without a subdomain. For landing pages, highly recommend using subdomains, and then it will have no material impact on this.
Awesome. Just so I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So if you have a topic and then you have an article or piece of content below that topic, you don't want to link it to another topic within your website because that would confuse the algorithm to a degree, or I guess make it less efficient.
Yes, exactly. Right. Because then you're starting to look more like the left-hand side. Right. So I would not ever put a link on this page that says, hey, do you want to read about this subtopic? Not if I want to create this siloed structure. And again, the way that the structure is maintained, every line on here is an internal link, which is a hyperlink to the same domain.
And now that these LLMs are becoming multimodal, meaning they can like watch videos and like, you know, listen to, and stuff, how important is podcasts on YouTube or, you know, Spotify or any of that?
I would say that it's just like any other mention, right? So I think if you're getting on a podcast and your business is being mentioned, you're going to get that mention credit. You know, if it's on your site, I feel like it's looking for relevance and trust, right? So my response would be, do you think that a podcast, you know, the same set of content written versus in a podcast, does that make it any more relevant or any more trustworthy? I would say if I were writing the algorithm, I would say no real material impact, you know, on that change. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Interesting.
Thanks. Quick question on the subdomains on the landing page. Like, does the rooted domain benefit as well, or it's siloed?
Yeah. So in the SEO and the GEO world, a domain and its subdomains are all treated differently from each other, right, as a baseline. So if you have this on your root domain, and then this is root domain, subdomain, second subdomain, these two would not contribute in the same way to your home as these two would, right? So you want to,
which is perfect.
Yeah, you want to keep everything on one domain for this exercise, and anything that you don't want impacting this, create a subdomain, or just use it like maybe you get vikingshipmedia.net or whatever, because that's separate. Cool. Any other questions? Looks good in the chat.
I have a quick question, Ru. If you, let's say you have like a landscaping client, and they want to have multiple regions, and let's say for one service, like landscape installation, is it wise to try to do, best landscaper installation near me page under that service for each city that they service in, or is that overkill?
Yeah, so you're getting into some of the like local nuances, which I do work a lot in, and I would say it depends, right? When it comes to local ranking, which is not GEO, right? Trust and relevance are both really huge, as well as distance. And I would say that typically my typical structure would be this. All of this would be like the landscaping and everything under landscaping. Maybe this is like something else they do and everything under that. And then typically I would have a third like kind of blue one out here that's like our locations. And then I would nest all of the individual location sites under that. So that's a typical way you would do it. If it's super competitive, typically what I would do is I would actually create the location page, and then I would replicate this entire structure under that. So it's like a recursive function. But that's overkill, right? I would only do that if I were like trying to rank, like, I don't know, a personal injury attorney in New York City, right? But for most local clients, like it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Like no one else is competing. So it's like this structure with locations on the side typically is sufficient.
Nice. And do you use meta ads to kind of dramatically increase traffic to enhance your SEO or your GEO as well?
I haven't used paid traffic to do that. No, I've mostly just relied on organic traffic, because as they rank higher, if it's the right type of business, people are going to click on their website and call once you rank higher.
Do you think that could be done to kind of steroid it out? Kind of.
I do.
Yeah, you can definitely do that, because one of the like ranking factors is engagement, right? They want to see how long you're there, and are you converting and taking those actions. So sure, if you wanted to give them more conversion data, then that would be a way to inflate it for sure.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, let's keep rolling. All right, 2 of 4 for on-site. Frequently asked questions. So this is a very specific type of content. I'm sure you guys have seen them all the time. You may have even heard that they're super useful for GEO. One of the reasons why is because they're extremely structured, right? You have a question, you have an answer. You have a question, you have an answer. And so it's easy for the algorithm to walk through it. The other thing is, when we talk about relevance, if you do it right, the questions that you are answering are the ones that your users are typically asking, right? And so it's kind of like keyword matching. It's question matching, right? So that's why they're super powerful for GEO. So the process that I use for FAQs for my clients is these 4 steps, research, write, publish, and then add schemas. We'll talk about schemas later. But I use AI. This is like, Michael, you're asking about ChatGPT. I use the deep research functionality there. I have a prompt I use, and I'm basically like, go check out Reddit, go check out the local forums, go check out this stuff, and go, do your research and tell me what are the top 10 questions that people are asking about X, right? Just do that research for me. And then it'll come back with that and say, here's what people are asking. And then I'll write the content. This is where I say, you want to write it for humans. Don't write for the algorithm. Don't keyword stuff or anything like that. You already got the benefit from the research. You're asking the right questions and answering them. This is where I use Claude to write my answers, and I have my vetting process and all of that. And then when you publish on a page, I use H tags for creating my structure. A lot of people, whether you're using like Wix, Go High Level, WordPress, whatever, they all have these widgets for FAQs, and they all have that fancy, you click on it and it drops down. It looks really, really cool. Problem is that I know this is absolutely a fact for Google. I'm not entirely sure yet for the AI algorithms. The jury's still out. But the way that Google crawls your site, which a lot of people mirror, is it will take, when it crawls, it takes your HTML page and it renders it in the mobile view, not in the desktop. It renders it in the mobile view. And then what it does is it consumes the content that is visible, but it does not engage with any JavaScript elements. Well, when you click on the, hey, I want to read the answer, that JavaScript is what reveals that answer. So essentially you're giving it all the cues and you're hiding all the answers. And so what I like to do is usually I'll have like an FAQ say on a home page. I got my H1 tag. I've got my H2 sections. One of my H2 sections will be FAQ at the bottom, and each question will be an H3 tag, and the answer will be body text under it. And that creates a very clear structure, and there's no rendering issues because there's no dynamic. And if you really think about it, like someone sees your list of Q&As, unless it's like 100 long, they don't really care about that drop-down functionality. So I don't use it. I recommend not doing it because it definitely hurts you on Google. I'd be shocked if it didn't hurt you on GEO. So then you want to publish, and then you do want to include FAQ schemas on your HTML whenever you're doing FAQs, and we'll talk about that as tactic number 3 of 4. So I'll get into that in a minute. But this is my strategy for FAQs. Works pretty well, not super hard, especially because I use AI to do 1 and 2, and publishing pretty easy. That's like a 5-minute thing. And then schema is also not that long. So it's a pretty easy win.
Dude, that is a gold nugget right there. Imagine you do the FAQ, you AI optimize your site perfectly, and then you have this like accordion thing just making it so I can't read it at all. Like,
yeah,
that's a huge insight there. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was surprised when I heard it too. All right, any questions about FAQs? All right, looking good. All right, schemas. Let's talk about it. Time to take away my GAQ. All right, so what are schemas? Some of you may know, some of you may not. So I just want to assume that you don't know. So this is backend JSON code.
All right, you guys, that's all I have for you for now. If you want to watch the rest of that recording, which includes Q&A, join Meta Ads Mastery. The group is currently at the lowest price that it will ever be. We're actually doing a price increase on March 31st to $249 a month. So if you join now, you will get grandfathered in at our absolute lowest rate. Members get access to my brand new Beat Your Best Ad in 30-day course, which is getting rave reviews. You also get 3 weekly live calls, and you can ask questions to myself and my other experts anytime and get answers very fast. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you inside.